This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
Welcome back to the show. Getting a lot of you guys on Twitter as well. Just confirming that you are with us. I have Mkolisi. He's going at at Mkolisi Balak. Just going on to say, Ntate Lehodi, are you related with the legendary Harold Lehodi? I get this question all the time. But yeah, we are not related. But yeah, you know that we are one happy family here. And if, you know, Ntate Jesse Queen, the Hodi and everyone else that is part of this surname, they've got beautiful stories to tell, then I'm part of that, right? So Lenny as well, going at Covers Lenny, just saying on Twitter that at Katlego Lehodi at Power FM 987 Morning Cat and the Power listeners, we together until 3 a.m. A great show as always. So thank you very much. But then without further ado, we have Ntate Kekana who's joining us this morning. So good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Daddy. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing this morning?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for joining us. We're taking stock as well. We're talking about undivided attention. Can there ever be an undivided attention given to the young ones? We're hearing that we're not doing our part as parents as this is concerned. We're hearing that at least 70% of parents say that they feel distracted by their cell phones when they spend time with their kids. Can you ever say that you can give them that undivided attention and be intentional about it?
It's possible, and especially if you are focused on the last part, being intentional. Because let me put it this way: when it all starts out, is you give a child a device so that they can get familiarized with the technology, but as well it helps keep them occupied while you do other maybe necessary things, right? And then time goes by, they get used to the device, and you also get used to your own device. But then you can easily get lost in each other's devices, such that when they no longer have a device and you have yours, you are now in the habit of always being on your device, especially in the day and age where in our homes we can easily have uncapped Wi-Fi. So we find ourselves distracted in our devices, and especially in days when even we can still do our jobs or communicate with our colleagues and line managers using WhatsApp. We can easily find ourselves distracted in our devices. So it takes intentionality to then make sure that, okay, you set a specific time where you then say, I am intentionally not going to be available on my device and spend time with my children or child. Because if you don't do that, you can claim that you're spending time with your child or with your children, and yet still be busy on a device and getting distracted. So it's all about intentionality. If you don't have the intention and purpose of why you are choosing to be intentional with your child and ignoring your device, then you won't see a need for it. You'll always think, they are fine where they are and I'm fine where I am. Or I'm fine, I can multitask, man. Hey, I can listen to my child while on my device. But we all know we cannot multitask. No matter how brilliant we think we are, we will always miss important details because we are not present in the moment. We don't hear. We may be hearing what they're saying, but we are not listening to what they are saying, because listening also involves looking, paying attention to the body language and processing what is being said and reflecting it back to the person who was saying it. So children need to be seen and heard and understood.
What do you make then of parents that would say that, listen, daddy, you know what? Really, I have to get the money. I have to get the bag here. And these kids, for them to really enjoy this life or whatever wherever they find themselves in terms of them asking and then they receive without any hustle here is me making sure that, I make sure that I put in the work. I do the work. He's always there carrying his suitcase. When he gets in, he's on the phone. 2 minutes later, he's driving out, comes back, things are moving, and then, relaxes a bit, go out for a smoke, come back on the phone, and then talk a little bit about how your day was, and then we carry on with, our day, that kind of thing, whereby you're like, very well that I'm a hustler, I'm a corporate, I'm someone that really needs to put in the work, I'm a business person, and, that is how then also our kids tend to see that you need to put in the work, as a person, because our parents would put in the work. That on its own could really find one compromised where the relations between them and the young ones are concerned, looking at the fact that it's not all about work. There are those relations and there are those issues that sometimes when you're busy with this chasing the bag and chasing the money, you tend to forget those all important bonds and relations between you and the young one.
Yeah, sometimes we have to balance reality versus romanticism of parenthood. And here's what I mean. If, for example, you're an entrepreneur and your livelihood solely depends on your engagement with clients, there may be times when certain things you will need to put aside, including your relations with other people and unfortunately even your children. But we then need to also come back and be intentional and say at least out of the 7 days of the week, I need to make sure that at least I set time, just either a day, basically a day where I'm switched off and I'm focusing on the people that I love, on the people who matter the most. On a daily basis, there needs to be a time where your clients know that at a particular time, you are focusing on your children. Maybe it's homework time, it's bath time, or it's sleep time. Around those times, your clients need to know that you are unreachable because there's something important to you. And when you're able to draw those boundaries, your clients will respect that. They can send something, they can do whatever. But when they know that maybe during these 2 hours you are not available, then they will not expect a response from you until afterwards. But if we always try and romanticize this idea of parenting as, you need to be always available, it's not always realistic, because then we tend to put unnecessary pressure on entrepreneurial parents who are really trying to do their best for their children, but they're not really getting anywhere because now they feel, I'm really not balancing this parenting thing out. And with that, they then tend to have resentment towards either themselves or the children even. That here's this person I'm trying to provide for, and yet I'm under pressure to provide for them. But at the same time, I'm still under pressure to give them attention. Why can't I just give them a device and ensure that the device is protected and they get to learn whatever it is that they need to learn? So we need to understand the type of environment that we are in. But it is also important, very important, that we make sure that we set aside at least an hour to a day where we intentionally focus on our children. And sometimes we can be together with them on their devices so that we get to see what they are doing. So it's all about being in your child's world. That is much more important to them, because they can also put aside the device and say, let's go do this, or let's go do this away from devices. So we also need to set aside those times in that, for example, one day where you say, maybe let's go take a walk, let's go sit outside and talk or do whatever. But you are both getting away from the devices. You put them on mute, and then you leave them in the charger, and then you go sit outside. And you make sure that you are intentional in that moment. You will get to learn a lot from your children, and they can get to know who you are and spend time with you as a parent.
I mean, really, when you look at it, then maybe take us through what this does into the psyche of the young one when we often just see our parents very busy here, because then you would hear maybe children saying that my parents are always busy or they are always on their phone. You'd hear a person saying that when you text them, they take their time to text back. But then when they are with their friends, you can tell that it's a different story here, meaning that a child may feel also avoided here, and they may feel that, they have to compete for your attention as a parent with that device. So it's instead of now starting to be jealous of that device, to say that she's always on this device. So if only I could get that same particular attention as what this cell phone, this device is getting, that would be something that helps here. What does this do into the psyche of the young one when then the parents is just seemingly busy here?
It destroys them, because it says, I am less important. I do not feel valued as a member of this family. Why am I even here? And then most children tend to unintentionally go into a path of self-destruction. Just to get the attention of the parent. So they will see what can really get my parents' attention. Maybe I need to do drugs or misbehave, find ways of doing things that are out of the norm, so that I can get my parents' attention, so they can dress in a particular way. So it's always that children will always, it's like a psychological switch in them that says, if I'm not getting the attention that I need and deserve from my parent, therefore I'm going to get it in other ways. So I'm going to act out. And when I act out, then my parents, and for the first time they act out and they get your full attention. Maybe you either screaming at them, you're shouting at them, or maybe they've been misbehaving and now you are forced to pay full attention to them because you are reprimanding them. They realize, okay, this is the only time when I can have your full attention without you being on the device. And therefore they will always do that which gets them your full attention, unfortunately. But it also creates a rift between you and the child, in that the child then does not feel as though they are a human being. They have to do something that is self-destructive to compete with a non-human thing, with people who are far off. Sometimes they will even want to be distant because they think, okay, maybe if I am distant, then I can be the one that my parent is chatting with on the phone. And when that does not happen, nature does not allow a vacuum. So your child will then seek attention from other people. That's where then our children get into cults. That's where our children get into groups that lead them astray. That's where we get to see them hanging around with other children, where they are now into whatever other things that children get up to, things like taking drugs or taking intoxicating stuff, just to be away from the parents, just to escape the reality of being rejected by their parent who has chosen a device over them.
Yeah, no, that is true. So basically, you can just be setting this child for a failure, something that can actually affect them long term or in the long run, if maybe probably you are just not paying too much attention to what their needs may be. Am I getting it right here, Daddy, to say that really there's something that you can avoid in terms of how then your child can just find themselves really making bad choices in life because they're looking for some sort of an outlet or an attention that they can grab from you in that regard. So you just being present and being intentional about it without any interferences could help also your child in terms of salvaging the relations or salvaging who they are in the long run.
Very much. It makes a big difference to set aside time for your children and pay attention. I mean, if lack of attention can destroy a relationship with a grown-up, how much more with a child who is vulnerable, who needs attention? It does more damage. So we do need to be very intentional, but also there is a balance between giving enough and sufficient attention and too much attention. Because then we can tend to suffocate our children. But we also need to be very intentional not to create the perception that children now need to compete with our devices, with our work life, with our friends, because they will tend to resent those things and then act out in different ways.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And then really when you look at it, does it move from one parent to the next in terms of a case by case, or you find that, you just really need to put that device away and try find out what is happening with your young one? Because then one would say that Katleho is just that person that likes coming in and then they close themselves in their place, in their room. Or basically, we, as a family, we have not created that culture of just sitting down, talking or catching up. Really, as a parent, do you need to, is it now on you to be intentional about making sure that you also rope Katleho in so that maybe probably they also put their devices away? Because you may find that it's not just you as a parent that is always on the device, but Katleho also as a child is always on his device. How do I also now then convince Katleho that please get off TikTok, get off social media, you'll come back to your friends and whatnot, but let's talk, let's just find out, let's just catch up, where I get to find out really who's your favorite teacher, why, you know what I mean, what is your favorite day of the week, so that I can tend to understand, Fridays, Katleho loves Fridays, and Fridays, we all wake up very happy and in a good mood. So I also tap in on what makes you happy. Would it really be prudent for you as a parent to also, encourage the young one to put their device away?
You see, that's a very good question, Daddy. And the most important thing that I also want to share is children do not do what we say, but they do what we do. So if I want to get my children off their devices from very early on, I need to put my device away. And when I am deciding to give them attention, I need to show them that this is the time where I want to give them attention, and therefore I am asking them to do the same, because I cannot say to them, put your device away, and yet my device is on my hand.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help the fact that I take my device and I flip it over, and then I say, okay, this is now the time for us to connect, put your device away, and yet my device is just here. It's on my hand or it's in my pocket. It needs to be as far away from me as possible so that they too can then learn that when it is our time, they can take the device and put it away from them, put it on mute, and then focus on each other. Because what you're also teaching them, or actually what you're also modeling, is mindfulness and being present. That this is what it means. It means you put everything away and you say, this moment is yours. I am here. I see you. Do you see me? Because I have made time for you. And we then get to teach them through our actions that this is how it is done. So we need to get off our high horses as parents in trying to always tell, and instruct, but start modeling what we want our children to do. Gone are the days where we could where parents could just say, do this, do as I say, but don't do as I do. This time, in this day and age, children will easily call you out if you don't do what you tell them to do, and if you don't do what you expect them to do, because they will easily call you a hypocrite, because sometimes our children don't have those filters. So what we need to do, whatever it is that we want them to do when we want to spend time with them, we must learn to do the same. And not because maybe we've gone 6 years without connecting with them telephonically. We've always been on the phone, and then suddenly we put our phones away and expect them to do the same. We need to show them that, okay, now I am making an effort, and be patient until it resonates with them what that actually means.
And do we need to also pace ourselves, check our screen time in terms of what we post and what we don't post as parents, looking at the fact that then some of us are friends with our young ones on social media, so meaning that that then gives us that responsibility to check ourselves as to what we post and how we then engage with other people, because then our little ones are watching.
Oh. That is a very, very important question, and a very good one, Betty, because we tend to forget that once we put something out on social media, it just is there permanently. And when we think we have deleted it, somebody has saved it. So we must always post age-appropriate content, and don't think that social media forgets, because it doesn't. It can always be embarrassing to our children. So we need to be careful that we must remind ourselves that we are no longer young. We are not the children we see. And we must post content that is relevant for us, or otherwise just scroll through. Don't post anything, because some parents tend to overshare, and they share things that are quite embarrassing. And now you find your child is learning things about you as they are parent through their friends that they've seen you do on social media, and it's so embarrassing, because children can be cruel towards each other. And now they're flaunting this inappropriate content in your child's face. And it's something that you cannot even delete.
Yes,
so we need to be really careful that the older we get, it's either we get off social media if we cannot control what we share, or we share age-appropriate content, keeping in mind that children can actually access that type of content. That is also another topic for another day, because we tend to see horrific things where parents lay their dirty laundries in public on social media, and then things are now trending for the wrong reasons. And then you ask yourself, is this really somebody's mother? Is this really somebody's father? What is their child doing when they see this? Sometimes we are so desperate to create content and be an influencer for the wrong reasons with the wrong kind of content, completely oblivious to the impact it has on our children.
The young one,
And the psychological damage that we do to our children can be irreparable if we are reckless.
No, that is true. We need to always keep them in mind in the way that we act, the way that we behave. But what I like is us just being intentional about putting our gadgets away and prioritizing our relationships with the young ones. Daddy, how do we get hold of you just before we let you go?
info@dadsinthepicture.co.za. On Twitter, it's @dadsinthepic. And then there's also a website, dadsinthepicture.co.za.
Awesome. Dadsinthepicture.co.za. Daddy, Zibuse, everything of the best where your day is concerned, and we'll touch base soon.
Thank you, Daddy. It's always a pleasure having a conversation with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. Zibuse Kunene coming through there as the founder of Dads in the Picture, the chairman of Dads in the Picture there.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.